Welcome to today's programming tutorial. Today, we will be looking at iteration. Iteration is a very useful skill in programming as it helps to reduce the amount of repeated instructions. There are two main types of iteration you need to be aware of: condition-controlled iteration and count-controlled iteration. Let's start with condition-controlled iteration. This type of iteration is simple. The instructions will repeat as long as the condition returns true. These instructions are the same type of conditions to the conditions used in selection statements. A condition-controlled iteration can be written as a while loop. To start, write while, followed by brackets, followed by curly brackets. The structure of this iteration is similar to a selection statement. The first set of brackets holds the condition. Let's create an integer variable above that stores the value 10. The condition in the while loop uses the relational operators we learnt about in a previous lesson. Keep in mind that you can also use Boolean operators inside a while loop's condition. Let's set the condition to check if the variable is greater than 1. This means that while the variable is greater than 1, the condition-controlled iteration will continue repeating instructions inside of the curly brackets. Let's write a simple instruction. Output the string countdown followed by concatenating the variable. Let's run our program. As you can see, we are stuck in a bit of an infinite loop. We can stop the infinite loop by holding down the Ctrl-C and pressing C. This happened because there is no point in the code where the condition is not true. The variable is always greater than 1. Let's modify the code. Inside the while loop, we will set the variable to equal itself minus 1. Here, we are saying when the number is 10, store 10 minus 1, which is 9. When the number is 9, then store 9 minus 1, which is 8, and so on. Remember that you can change what is stored in a variable using the assignment operator. Let's run the program again. As you can see, we can count down and stop the iteration when the variable is below or equal to 1. The iteration won't output countdown 1 as it stops before then. Now, let's look at count-controlled iteration. Count-controlled iteration comes in the form of for loops. The structure of this iteration is similar to the while loop, except we use for instead of while. The data in the brackets are slightly different. We have three parts to our for loop. The first part of our loop is the declaration of a counter variable. This is a variable that will be used within the for loop to count up or down. Let's set our counter variable to 0. Next, we have a condition, and we will want to use the counter variable. Let's say that it will continue repeating while the counter variable is less than 10. Lastly, we need to tell the program what happens to the counter variable after each iteration. Let's say that each time it loops, the counter variable is assigned itself added by 1. Notice we use semicolons here, which is why I said we have three parts to this count-controlled iteration. We declare a variable to use as a counter, we set a condition for that counter, and then we state what happens to the counter after each time it repeats. Let's output the counter variable and see what happens. As you can see, when we run our program, our counter variable increments until it is past 9, i.e. less than 10. Remember, as with selection statements, both condition-controlled iteration and count-controlled iteration can have iteration nested inside themselves. Let's look at a quick example with count-controlled iteration. In this example, the first for loop iterates or repeats 5 times from 0 to 4. Inside the iteration, it outputs the first counter variable, x, and then runs another count-controlled iteration which repeats 10 times. Note that the second iteration uses a different name for the counter variable. Inside the nested iteration, it outputs the y variable in a line using console.write instead of console.writeLine. After the nested iteration runs, it outputs a new line. Thinking about this, if each of the first iteration runs 10 nested iterations inside it, we iterate a total of 50 times. Each time the first iteration repeats, it will repeat 10 times in the nested iteration. This is a key area to build your confidence in, as it will come back in again in later lessons. Thank you for watching this tutorial. I hope you have found it helpful.